What object in your home would you notice if it went missing? Not because of its value, not because replacing it would be difficult or expensive, but because something in you, something that does not speak in words, would feel different without it. You know what I am describing. Most people, if they are honest, have one, maybe two. An object whose absence would register not as inconvenience, but as a particular low-frequency disquiet. Take a moment with that. Solomon identified that object. He gave it a name, not a poetic name, not a philosophical metaphor, a functional, technical name. He called it the threshold object, and he left one warning about it that was never passed on in church. You must never let it leave your hand. Let me show you where this comes from, because I am not about to ask you to follow a rule that Solomon invented out of thin air. The warning is derived from a mechanism, a system, something Solomon spent years constructing from first principles, from the interrogation of entities that understood how spiritual protection actually works. And the mechanism, when you understand it, will change how you see every protective object you have ever owned, every one you have given away, every one you have lent and not entirely recognized when it came back. This is not superstition. What I am going to show you is one of the most precisely described systems of spiritual protection in the ancient world, and it turns on a single principle that Solomon articulated, and that 3,000 years of human tradition across 4 continents independently confirmed. The protection is not in the object, the protection is your name attached to the object. And the moment you place the object in someone else's hands with genuine intention, the name changes. Let me take you into the Testament of Solomon first. Not the canonical books, not Proverbs or Ecclesiastes. There is a third category of Solomonic text, manuscripts the church calls pseudepigraphical, which is a scholarly term meaning attributed to Solomon but not accepted into the official canon. These texts live at the intersection of the archaeological record, the ancient manuscript tradition, and the living household practices of real people across 3 millennia. The Testament of Solomon is the most important of them. It was composed in Greek, probably between the 1st and 5th centuries of the Common Era, drawing on source materials considerably older than its final written form. The text presents itself as Solomon's own account, written in his own voice, of how he came to have authority over demonic forces. He was given a ring, not a metaphorical ring, a ring with a seal, given to him by the archangel Michael, bearing Solomon's name and the divine seal. And the ring gave him power not to destroy demons, but to summon them, bind them, and interrogate them. Solomon's genius in the Testament is that he asked questions. He wanted to understand the mechanism. Chapter after chapter, he calls each spirit before him, the ring compelling them to speak truthfully, and he asks, "What is your name? What harm do you do?" And the third question, the one that produces the knowledge that protects, "How are you defeated?" He builds a catalogue, a systematic record of how the forces that harm people are identified, named, and stopped. Now look at what happens with the ring, because this is the moment the mechanism becomes visible. In one passage of the Testament of Solomon, and in the parallel tradition recorded in Islamic hadith about Suleiman, a demon named Ornias gains temporary possession of the ring. In the Testament version, Solomon allows this briefly as a demonstration of the ring's authority. In the Islamic tradition, the demon Saka, whom the Jewish tradition calls Asmodeus, steals the ring from Solomon during a moment of inattention. Both traditions record the same consequence. The moment the ring left Solomon's possession, genuinely left, not loaned with his name still upon it, but taken or surrendered into the authority of another, Solomon lost everything. The Islamic tradition is the most vivid on this point. Saka takes the ring. He rules in Solomon's place for 40 days. He sits on Solomon's throne, issues Solomon's judgments, speaks in Solomon's name, because he holds Solomon's seal. And Solomon himself wanders, unrecognized, powerless. The greatest king of the ancient world, stripped of every protection and every authority, because the object through which his name was legible to the forces that attended him was no longer in his hand. 40 days. That is the duration of the lapse. Until the ring is restored, Solomon cannot be found by what guards him. He is spiritually unaddressed. That phrase, spiritually unaddressed, is actually a legal term. Let me show you where it appears. The Talmud, Tractate Berakot, 6th chapter. The mezuzah protects the house. This is not a statement of poetic sentiment. The Talmud is one of the most rigorously precise legal documents ever produced. When it makes a statement about what protects a house, it means something specific. The mezuzah is a small case attached to the doorframe of a Jewish home. Inside it is a piece of parchment inscribed with passages from Deuteronomy, passages that contain the divine names. The mezuzah marks the threshold. It identifies the house as belonging to someone under divine protection, and the Talmud is explicit about what happens when the mezuzah is removed. Tractate Menachot 43b. The Shulchan Aruch, Yoruba 291. A mezuzah that is taken down from a doorpost and placed in another home, even for a single night, causes the original home to become what the halakhic literature calls beit patur, an exempt house, a house that has been exempted from protection, a house that is spiritually unaddressed. The law goes further. You may not lend a mezuzah, not temporarily, not to a neighbor who is waiting for their new one to arrive, not even to someone in genuine need, because lending the mezuzah lends the address. The protection was not attached to the object in the abstract. It was attached to the specific name and household it was inscribed for, placed at the threshold of that specific house. Remove it, and the house becomes indistinguishable from an unmarked building. The forces that guard it have no address to attend. This is the Talmudic confirmation of the mechanism Solomon discovered when Orneas took the ring. The object is the address. Surrender the object, and you surrender the location. Now let me take you to the Key of Solomon, the great practical grimoire, the manual that the Solomonic tradition eventually produced from centuries of accumulated wisdom. The Key of Solomon is explicit about uninitiated hands. It contains a warning, running through multiple sections, about allowing any person who has not been properly prepared to touch, handle, hold, or carry any instrument used in protective workings. The reason it gives is precise. The instrument is charged to the name and intention of the operator. A stranger's touch introduces a foreign intention into the object. The key does not say the stranger's touch destroys the protection. It says the stranger's touch introduces a foreign intention that degrades or reverses the tuning. Think about what tuning means. The object is not a battery storing power. The object is more like a receiver, calibrated to a specific frequency, which is the frequency of your name, your household, your particular spiritual signature. When someone else handles it with genuine intention, not casually, not glancingly, but with the grip of someone who is now carrying it as their own, the receiver recalibrates. It begins responding to their name, and yours goes unanswered. Here is the mechanism, stated as precisely as I can state it. In the Solomonic understanding of how protective forces work, there is a question of legibility. Protective forces, whether you understand them as angelic intelligences, as aspects of divine providence, as the spiritual architecture of a specific lineage, do not simply hover around everyone indiscriminately. They attend to names, to addresses, to specific identifiers that tell them, here is the household that belongs to me. Here is the person whose protection is my assignment. The threshold object is how your name is made legible. It is the marker that says, the person whose name this bears lives here, carries this, holds this. Attend here. When you lend the object, genuinely lend it, not as a casual gesture but as a transfer, the marker changes hands. The protective forces attend the marker, not the person. The person who should be attended is now spiritually unaddressed, not unprotected in some vague metaphorical sense. Specifically, precisely, technically unaddressed, the way a letter is unaddressed when you write it, but forget to put a name on the envelope. The infrastructure for delivery is intact, but the letter does not move, because there is no name to deliver it to. That is what Solomon experienced when the ring left his hand. That is what the Shulchan Aruch is describing when it says, you may not lend a mezuzah. That is what the Key of Solomon is warning against when it prohibits uninitiated hands. The object carries your name. Give it away, and your name goes with it. Now think about what is going on in West Africa, because this is where the mechanism stops being a Jewish legal principle or a grimoire warning and becomes something that the entire human tradition has been quietly affirming for as long as people have been making protective objects. I want to tell you about the night before I left for London. I was 19 years old. I had been accepted to SOS. It was the last evening in Nsukka before my father drove me to Lagos airport. My grandmother, Mama Chidinma, was still alive then. She was in her mid-70s. She had outlived 2 of her own children and 1 grandchild. She was not a sentimental woman. She did not deal in sentimentality the way grief sometimes produces in people. She was direct. She observed. She waited until she had something worth saying. And then she said it clearly. That evening she took my hands in hers. She was holding something. Small. I could feel it through her grip. She opened her hands and placed the object in mine. I'm not going to describe it specifically. It is not relevant what it looks like. What is relevant is what she said. She said, "This goes with you, and it comes back to me when you die." Not before. I thought at 19 that I understood what she meant. I thought it was a grandmother's sentiment, a piece of family meaning, a connection to Nsukka, a way of saying, "I will always be with you." I was wrong. I did not understand what she was actually describing until I was at SOS reading the Shulchan Aruch commentary on mezuzah. Sitting in a seminar room in London, probably 8 or 9 years after that last evening in Nsukka, I was reading the passage about beit patur, the exempt house, the spiritually unaddressed household, and I stopped, because I recognized the mechanism. Mama Chidinma had not given me a sentimental object. She had given me a threshold marker, the object through which whatever guards my name could locate me in London, far from Nsukka, far from everything that should have been familiar to what attends to my household. She did not use the word address. She did not say threshold marker or spiritual legibility. She said, "This goes with you." That was the mechanism. The object goes where you go, because what guards you follows the object, because the object carries your name. And she was absolutely specific about the one condition under which the object was permitted to change hands. Not before you die, not lent, not borrowed, not shared, not given as a gift to someone who admired it. The object returns when the life ends, not before. Because until the life ends, the address must remain constant. It is on my desk here in Oxford as I speak to you tonight. It has been on my desk, or in my coat pocket, or on my person in some form, since the evening she placed it in my hands. I have never lent it. I understand now exactly why she told me not to. The Yoruba tradition in Nigeria, the tradition I grew up adjacent to, not within but close enough to observe, has a specific term for personal protective objects, ogun. In the Hausa and broader Islamic-influenced tradition of northern Nigeria, the equivalent is the tira, a written amulet, usually containing Quranic verses or divine names. Both traditions share the same principle about these objects. They are not to be shared. They are prepared with the recipient in mind. The Yoruba understanding is that the protective preparation is done with the ori of the intended person. Ori being the inner head, the spiritual essence, the personal divine destiny of a specific individual. The preparation is tuned to that person's ori. It responds to their spiritual signature. Lend it to someone else, and 2 things happen. First, the lender is exposed. Their marker is no longer attending to their name. Second, the borrower does not receive the protection they might expect. The object is calibrated to someone else's ori. At best, it does nothing for them. At worst, and the Yoruba tradition is not shy about this, the mismatch between the object's tuning and the borrower's ori creates a spiritual interference. The borrower finds themselves spiritually bound to the lender's patterns, to the lender's troubles, to whatever the lender has been working through. You lend your protection, and the borrower inherits your burdens along with it. Neither person is better off. Now let me bring these 3 traditions together into the single principle, the Testament of Solomon. The ring works for Solomon because Solomon is the named authority. The moment the ring leaves his possession with genuine intent, the authority transfers. Solomon wanders unprotected for 40 days. The Shulchan Aruch, the mezuzah, protects the specific household it marks. Remove it, and the household becomes beit patur, unaddressed, exempt from protection. You may not lend it. The key of Solomon, a protective instrument, is charged to the name and intention of the operator. A foreign hand with genuine intention retunes the receiver. The Yoruba tradition, a protective object prepared for a specific ori cannot serve a different ori. Sharing it exposes the original owner and creates interference for the borrower. The mechanism is the same in all four. The object is not a store of power. It does not contain protection the way a battery contains charge, to be depleted gradually until it needs replacing. The object is an address, a marker, a way for whatever guards your name to find you. The protection is in the relationship between the object, your name, and the forces that respond to that name. Disrupt the relationship, lend the object with genuine intent, allow it to become genuinely someone else's, and the relationship breaks. Your name is no longer legible at the location the forces are attending. They do not stop existing. They do not stop operating. They simply cannot find you. You have become, in the precise Talmudic phrase, spiritually unaddressed. Now think about the objects in your life that you have given away, not accidentally lost, not stolen from you against your will, given away. Think about the object you gave to a friend because they admired it, the protective bracelet you let someone borrow and never asked back, the thing you placed in someone's hands with the words, "You can have this." Did anything shift? I am not asking you to retrofit a narrative onto every exchange you have ever made. Most objects carry no particular charge. Most transfers create no disruption. But I am asking you to be honest about the specific category I have been describing. The object whose loss, whose genuine willing transfer, registered in you as something more than the loss of a possession. You know the feeling. It is not grief. It is not resentment. It is a particular low-grade disquiet. An unspecific sense of something not quite attending. A feeling that you describe to yourself, probably, as being out of sorts, or a run of bad luck, or simply a vague and sourceless unease. Solomon understood what that feeling means. It means the address has changed. The marker is no longer in your hand, and what should be attending your name is attending someone else's. Let me tell you about the reclamation, because the Solomonic tradition does not only describe the problem, it prescribes the remedy. If the object is gone, genuinely given away, lent and not recovered, the tradition is clear. The object itself is secondary. What was primary was the address, the name attached to the object, and a name can be re-established. 3 steps. The first step is declarative. Speak your name and your household aloud at the threshold of your main entrance, the front door, the gate, the primary point of ingress to the place where you sleep. Do this morning and evening. Not a formal prayer, not a liturgy borrowed from someone else. Your name, your household, spoken aloud at the threshold. This is the same principle that underlies the mezuzah and the tira, and every threshold marker in every protective tradition on earth. The threshold is where the address is located. Speak the name at the threshold, and you begin to re-establish the legibility that the lost object was providing. Do this for 7 days. The key of Solomon's lunar cycle is 7 days. The Solomonic tradition uses the 7-day cycle for the establishment of any new protective working. 7 mornings and 7 evenings at the threshold. The second step is replacement. Find a new threshold object, not a purchased protective charm, not something off a shelf that has never been yours, something that already belongs to your life. An object already in your possession that you would notice if it went missing, not because of value, but because something in you would feel different without it. Hold it in your dominant hand. Speak your name and your household aloud 3 times while holding it. Not an incantation, not a formula borrowed from a grimoire. Your name, your household, spoken clearly 3 times. This is the retuning. You are recalibrating the marker to your name. You are making the address legible again. Place it at the threshold of your main entrance for 1 night, on the floor or the windowsill or any surface that touches the threshold space. 1 night, then carry it. The third step is the commitment. This is the part the tradition is most consistent about across every version. Once the replacement is established, the object does not leave your possession. Not temporarily, not for convenience, not because a friend admires it. It does not leave your hand. Solomon kept the ring. After the 40 days, after the wandering, after the humiliation of walking unrecognized through a kingdom that was rightfully his. He recovered the ring, and the text is explicit about what he did afterward. He never again let it leave his hand, not as a superstitious man who had learned his lesson through fear, as a man who understood the mechanism, who knew precisely what the ring was doing and precisely what its absence had cost him. He kept it because he understood it. That is the difference between protection and superstition. Superstition says, keep this because something bad might happen if you don't. Understanding says, keep this because I know exactly how this works, and I am not willing to disrupt the mechanism. Solomon's instruction was never about fear. It was about comprehension. Let me say one more thing before I close, because there is something in this mechanism, in the way Solomon worked it out through the interrogation of Onias, and through the 40 days of wandering, and through the moment he finally understood what the ring was, that I find almost unbearably precise. The mechanism does not require that anyone steal the object. It does not require malice. It does not require an enemy who wants to leave you exposed. All it requires is willingness. The moment you genuinely surrender the object, willingly, with genuine intent, the transfer occurs. No one has to take anything from you. You hand it over yourself. Solomon's tradition is describing something about the nature of protection that the institutional religious world has almost never said clearly. The greatest threat to your spiritual protection is not external. It is not the enemy who wants to harm you. It is not the malicious force that targets you. It is the casual transfer, the willing lending, the small gesture in which you place what is yours into the hands of someone else without recognizing what you are giving them. The demon did not take Solomon's ring at sword point. He waited until Solomon's attention was elsewhere. The ring left the hand not through violence, but through inattention. And that is the warning. Not protect yourself from those who would take what is yours by force, but know what you hold, understand what you carry. Do not give away what you are not meant to give, because what you are not meant to give is not just the object. It is the address. It is the legibility of your name to what guards you. It is the thin, precise thread of relationship between your household and the forces that should be attending it. That thread is not broken by enemies. It is broken by inattention, by the small, well-intentioned, completely unconscious act of placing what is yours into someone else's hands and watching it leave with them. The question I want to leave with you is not a rhetorical one. Solomon kept the ring. He never again let it leave his hand. The question is not whether you believe this. The question is not whether the mechanism I have described makes sense to you in the abstract. The question is concrete. What are you letting leave your hand right now that you are never meant to give away? What object in your possession, the one you thought of when I asked at the very beginning, has been lent or given or handed over without your fully recognizing what you are transferring? What address have you moved without realizing you are moving? Solomon's instruction does not require faith. It requires attention. Attention to what you hold, attention to what you release, attention to the difference between the objects that pass through your life without consequence and the specific, particular, felt object that is, in the precise language of the Solomonic tradition, the threshold marker of your name. The one that would leave you feeling different without it. Locate it. Keep it. Do not place it in someone else's hands with genuine intent. And if it has already left, if the transfer has already happened, go back to the threshold. Speak your name. 7 mornings, 7 evenings. Find the replacement. Re-establish the address. Solomon wandered for 40 days. He recovered what was his, and he understood, after the wandering, something that he could not have understood before it. What you hold is not just an object. It is your name, made legible to what guards you. Protect the address. Think about that tonight, and perhaps look around your home before you sleep, and find the object, the one you already know, and simply make sure it is still in your hand.